both Meghan and Harry have an intensity, a degree of what some people would call almost psychotic energy. And I think, it's the recognition that one shark has for another. Oh, so nice to meet you. Shall we go hunting for sea lions together? And Harry was having trouble finding a lady to marry. Harry was desperate to marry. Harry was desperate to have love, to marry, have children. Harry was desperate to replicate what William had. And this is really important. And people don't seem to understand that Harry was it was the third wheel in that relationship for years. And Harry couldn't close the deal.
Lady Colin Campbell, why was Prince Harry so easily seduced by Meghan Markle? Because I think back to that time period, and he was a guy who really had the pick of all the women who he wanted in London. Indeed, I remember revealing that he'd had a fling with the singer Ellie Goulding just a couple of weeks before things turned serious with Meghan Markle. So it wasn't that there were not lovely, very desirable, very famous British women, both in terms of the celebrity world and the aristocratic world, who were available to Prince Harry. So why was it that this D-list American walks in and all of a sudden all bets are off? If you're enjoying what we're doing here on Outspoken, please consider joining our thriving community over on Substack, www.outspoken.live. You can sign up completely for free, but Substack is so important to me. It is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. Plus, you get to communicate directly with me. Head on over www.outspoken.live, enter your email address, and sign up today.
Well, I think on some level, Dan, water seeks its own level, and each of them has personality traits that are compatible with the other. I think Meghan is a very forceful personality. Harry is a very blusteringly forceful personality who's very impetuous and very impassioned. And I'm being polite because I could use rather more pejorative words to describe his quite at times outrageously bizarre behavior. But Meghan, I think both Meghan and Harry have an intensity, a degree of what some people would call almost psychotic energy. And I think, it's the recognition that one shark has for another. Oh, so nice to meet you. Shall we go hunting for sea lions together, sort of thing. I think there was that element. But I know that you and many members of the media think that Harry could get any woman he wanted. Well, he might have been able to initially get a girl into bed once or twice. But I happen to know as a fact that because the friends of my children who Harry tried to get set up with recoiled from Harry. And Harry was having trouble finding a lady to marry. Harry was desperate to marry. Harry was desperate to have love, to marry, have children. Harry was desperate to replicate what William had. And this is really important. And people don't seem to understand that Harry was the third wheel in that relationship for years. And Harry couldn't close the deal. Chelsea Davy, she moved on. Cressida Bonus, she moved on. One or two others whose names I will not mention, but who are people who are friends of my children. some of them recoiled from, sorry, off, and so, and yeah, then he had, sort of ships passing in the night with various girls, but nothing came of any of that because, first of all, the well-bred girls ultimately didn't want to being royal was not so desirable that they would spend the whole of their lives tethered to Harry. That was the reality. So Harry was having real trouble finding a permanent woman. And he says that as soon as he met Meghan, there was a click. And I think there often is a click. I mean, certainly, I don't know about with you, but with me, whenever I've met somebody who was important, there was an immediate click. And psychologists would say that on an atavistic level, you recognize the reality of each other. Oh, as a friend of mine who was a famous psychologist said, in the first 15 seconds of meeting someone, at times you know more about them than you will know in the next 15 years. And so you should trust your instincts. Well, presuming, of course, you have good instincts. And so there was all of that going on. And he couldn't land a decent girl. And so he landed Meghan. And I think he was always going to end up either with somebody who truly loved him and truly was prepared to put up with the rubbish that went along with him. But that meant she really had to love him an awful lot. And there are other people who've had relationships like that and they have worked. I mean, to an extent, for instance, William and Catherine have a relationship like that. I mean, loving any Prince of Wales is not a bagatelle because it comes with so much baggage. And William is in some ways a very loving and great guy and very decent person. But in other ways, he's an extremely complex individual. And he's had a very, very trying life. And it's left its mark in ways that have turned out to be positive. But, I mean, you have to be a pretty intelligent, sort of very stable, very equanimous personality to actually be with William. And so William got his true love. Harry never got his true love. And what did Harry end up getting? Meghan Markle. So he was always going to either end up with true love or with no one or with then an opportunist. And he's ended up with an opportunist.
Lady C, can I just ask you about those two relationships that you talk about? Because if we start with, well, let's start with the most recent serious relationship before Meghan, which was Cressida Bonas. In Spare, Harry makes out as if he had dumped her. But of course, that has always been an issue of some contention. Who's right on that? Is that true? Did he really dump her?
Well, Harry is rather like my late father-in-law, who said to my late stepmother-in-law, 2 women have divorced me. I'm not going to allow a third to divorce me unless you pay me £250,000. Because his vanity couldn't stand 3 women divorcing him. Harry couldn't stand the fact that he was going to have to admit that Cressida Bonas was already in the process of, shall we say, nicely dismantling the relationship. Now, I mean, that's how nice girls function. I used to function like that. I used to try to give my boyfriend at the time, when I decided it wasn't going to be worth, my effort further, and nothing was going to come of it, and I didn't love him enough, or blah blah blah, that I'd try to let him down gently. And I mean, sometimes you thought you'd succeeded and discovered later on that you hadn't, because they'd seen right through you. Well, Harry, realizing he was going to be pushed, he jumped. So, and and then was churlish enough to publish it in a book. But let's remember, Harry was churlish enough to say that he had been de-virginized, and he was a svelte stallion, by a much older woman who's younger than his present wife. So,
Exactly.
it's a faith-saving exercise. But my understanding is that he realized that it wasn't going to go the way he wanted it, and so before he got chopped, he did the chopping, and then, as I say, and then was completely ungentlemanly enough to put this in a book. But it doesn't matter, because she's back. She's back with her old boyfriend, and very happy, and so it's fine. It's fine. And I mean, she doesn't care. I don't think anybody cares. And so
then the love of his life, Lady C, the one who really did get away, and I remember chronicling this for a long time during their off-on period, was Chelsea Davy. And I mean, many people, even today, Lady C, believe that that was the hammer blow for Harry. That's when Harry really started to change, when Chelsea just decided, I don't want to do this. What's your understanding about how that impacted him psychologically? But first, let's be honest, what passes for journalism today is little more than politically charged activism with a headline slapped on top. Truth gets buried under layers of spin, agenda, and algorithm-driven narratives. That's why I turn to Ground News. It cuts straight through the noise and shows you exactly what's happening. Ground News brings together headlines from over 50,000 sources across the globe, but what really makes it powerful is the transparency. You don't just see the stories, you see the political bias behind every source, the ownership ties, and the coverage breakdown across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Even the Nobel Peace Center praised it as an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. See for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. My favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle, but barely mentioned on the other. It's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So here's an example of a story barely getting any traction on the right. Joe Rogan just accused the Trump administration of gaslighting its own supporters over the Epstein scandal. It's a rare moment of someone considered to be on the right openly calling out Trump's team in such blunt terms. And here's one the left is completely ignoring. Reports say Kash Patel discovered burn bags stuffed with classified documents tied to the Trump-Russia probe. In other words, there may have been a deliberate effort to destroy evidence, yet almost no one on the left wants to touch it. I wonder why. With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right, and centre, and how reliable each source is. Also, importantly, who owns each outlet? It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see or know. And right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features I personally use for just $5 per month. Just visit ground.news/outspoken, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen. That's ground.news/outspoken. News/Outspoken. But now, back to the show.
I don't think it's had any of the profound impacts that some people would like to attribute. I think the guy was a jerk. I could actually use a word that begins with A and ends in hole. He behaved because that's how he behaved. And finally, she'd had enough and she just dropped the axe. And did it stop him from behaving like something that begins with an A and ends in hole? No, it didn't. And let's remember, Meghan indicated that, and Harry admitted it, that when he tried to pull the stunts with her that he had pulled with other girls, she said to him, "No, I'm not putting up with any of this." So good for her for having done it. But no, I don't think he learned a thing, quite frankly. I don't think Harry has still learned a thing. The lessons Harry is learning at the moment are not profound life lessons. They are pragmatic lessons due to the fact that he and Meghan are in big financial and commercial and professional trouble. And he understands that he needs to retrieve situations so that he can continue to exploit, because this is what it's all about. It's exploitation. And Meghan has taught him well in that regard. I don't think Harry was exploitative before. I think he was careless, and I think he was extremely dependent. And he certainly was paranoid and, a drama queen. And really a pill to have around, and the constant self-important delusionalism that went along with having a relationship with Harry was just taxing and tiresome, and ultimately no sensible girl wanted it. So he got a girl who wanted what he had to offer.
And I mean, it's such a shame in some ways for Chelsea Davy, although I look at her now and she's a mom and she seems to be very happy in her personal life.
She's happy. And she would have made a very good Duchess of Sussex. Cressida Bonus would have made a very good Duchess of Sussex as well. Both of them would have made good Duchesses of Sussex. But each of them is happy in her own private life. And Dan, I have friends, some of whom you've met, who could have married into the royal family and didn't want to, because it's at such a price. Usually girls from privileged backgrounds, they might think, oh, well, it would be nice and fun. And then they realize it's going to be at such a price that they're not prepared to pay it. And I think we need to bear that in mind as well, that a lot of these girls didn't want it as well because of all the constraints that go along with it. I mean, being royal is really very dull and boring for maybe 90% of the time. You have high points, but the rest of the time it's dull and boring. And most of the work is unsung, and they get a lot of criticism at times that is unfair, and every now and then they get criticism that is fair.
Isn't the problem, though, Lady C, that because he had been so sheltered, that meant that when Meghan came into his life, even though he had all of these people who did really care about him, from Prince William on down, saying, look, just be careful. She doesn't know everything. She doesn't know she's not quite as she seems, he decided to buy the dream. And I think a lot of that came down to his stupidity too, because he actually didn't understand that Meghan was a bit part actress in a basic cable show, making decent money, but coming to the end of that ride and certainly not a star.
Dan, she was on a maximum of 50,000 per episode.
Maximum.
That's not great money. Sorry.
No, and the residuals were not massive. I mean,
No.
and remembering she was doing these very sort of B-grade movies in her hiatus on Suits. But
Dan, didn't your school teacher when you were a child teach you the alphabet? D or F? Definitely not D. Come on.
Z. But he just totally bought into it, didn't he? He just swallowed her lines, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, but Meghan is very dominating and can be very seductive. And she is very, since this is YouTube, I'm going to choose my words carefully. She is very romantic in a horizontal way. And she was able to get him what President Trump called whipped. She managed to use the implement that got him whipped. And so he was enchanted. But she has a very dynamic personality if you buy into it. And she's certainly got a very strong personality. And Meghan has energy. Meghan has far more energy and is far more brutal than Harry. And it really became a contest as to who was going to dominate whom. And it became apparent to Harry, if you read what he said, by the end of the second date, that Meghan was the dominatrix he had always wanted. Harry basically wants somebody to take care of him. Harry wants somebody to big him up and tell him what a fantastic guy he is, what a great lover he is, how wonderful he is, and he equally was feeding her lines because he led her to believe that he was more powerful and that his position was greater and that the influence he had was greater than it turned out to be. So each of them was really on some level duping the other. But duper's delight, because look at it, they've ended up together and they've joined forces and they have turned out to be very adept at trying to dupe the rest of the world. So look at it like that.
Very, very good point. Fascinating insight as ever from Lady Colin Campbell. And if you want so much more of that, you just need to sign up to our Royal Uncancelled after show. www.outspoken.live is the address, and you get it first, either live or on demand, twice the length of what you've just seen, every Monday to Friday with no advertising whatsoever. Substack is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation and lawfare. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.